Hello and welcome to another edition of How I Failed in Business, the podcast that is designed to remind you that mistakes happen, failures happen, and we do so by interviewing some of the top leaders in the business world. I'm one of your hosts, Rob Spence. Now, for those watching this on YouTube, will notice that Sophia is not with us today. She's jet-setted off to Kendall Calling, I think, the festival up there. So it's just me. But today I'm joined by, or with, I should say, Mike Lane Evans of Forefront Coaching.
Hi.
Thanks for coming on, Mike.
Well, thanks for having me.
Come a long way, haven't you?
Well, yeah, I guess so. Yeah, London. I mean, a long way. It makes it feel like I've flown in.
You could have really milled
all
that.
The way
like,
from
yeah,
London.
I've come from Scandinavia or something. But you've come a long way, and you've been on a good friend of the show, Gary Parsons, over at Leaders in Disguise. You've come from his podcast.
I have, yeah.
This morning. So
doing the rounds.
How'd you feel doing the two podcasts in one day? It must be knackering, right?
No, I mean, I worked as an actor for most of my life, so I think like when 12 hours of being on camera and stuff like that, it's 1 hour on podcast is absolutely fine.
This is amateur. Absolutely.
Well, no, I mean, just the stamina's still there, I think.
Good man. Well, look, tell me more about Forefront Coaching. Tell me about what you do, how you do it, why you do it, and we'll flow.
Cool. So Forefront Coaching started 18 months ago. The idea for it started a lot longer ago than that, probably 6-7 years ago. So I was an actor, as I've just mentioned. I did that for 24 years or something. And in 2016, I found myself just failing all the time. I went into auditions, meetings, and what I described to my mates at the time was, I was like, I'm giving 60% of myself and I don't know why. There's this weird sort of ceiling that happens as soon as I go in the door and it leaves as soon as I walk out the door. I've worked hard, I've practiced, I've prepped for this, I know the people. And at the time, I was working with the British military. I was doing a lot of training for them. I wasn't serving. I was just a consultant. And I used that time to build up a lot of practices for myself, a lot of models and techniques to improve my communication. And when I was researching, turns out there was a study in the UK that looked into this kind of impact. And 83% of people reported feeling the same way that I did. This kind of, I've got this idea of what I want to do, but the actual sort of impact or the outcomes are not matching up. And so with Forefront Coaching, we're communication coaches. And so we're all about just helping people from wherever they're starting and then scaling them up, upskilling them from there.
That's fantastic. And my background is sales. You know, I'm a salesperson at heart, sales trainer, and communication is so important in business. I mean, would you say it's the most important thing in business from every element, would you say? Or
I mean, I'd go as far as say it sort of is business. You can't do any of it if you can't communicate, if you can't market it, if you can't sell it, if you can't explain what does your thing do in the first place. So I think the word communication, and I get this sometimes, I say I'm a communication coach and people look at me and they go, well, that's big. And one person about 3 weeks ago literally said to me, I think that's amazing, but communication's massive. So what does that actually mean? And it's great. It's great feedback for us to kind of understand how that's landing for people. But yeah, I think if you're a business that wants to improve your external communication, or if you're a business that's like, look, there's something not quite right, not quite gelling internally, it's quite often because of the communication.
Yeah, and I hear it so often, and I've worked in those companies where that communication just isn't there. Yes, obviously externally to customers, prospects, or whomever, but even internally, we've all heard the term of upstairs, downstairs. I worked in the typical, and you've probably faced this, where there was office staff, there was also warehouse staff and delivery staff, and it seemed that they're all working against each other as opposed in the same one. Is that something you witness a lot of, or?
Yeah, I think whilst I spent a lot of years as an actor, anyone who's ever met an actor has a million jobs at any one time. So I've worked in a lot of like events environments, and I'm with actors. It's so separate from actors, directors, producers, the crew. It's very often a really separate environment. Not always, but yeah, it's set up in that way. And you think, well, we're all just trying to get to the same sort of rounded goal at the end, and it doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, let's talk about your acting career a second. I'll come back to Forefront later on if that's all okay. So you're acting for how many years, sorry?
So 8 until, I think it's like 24 years.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
And are you allowed to name names as to what you've been in, or what kind of stuff you've been in?
Yeah. So I did a couple of little like BBC tiny sort of like Shakespearean things, not like, like Coronation Street or anything like that. And then I did a lot of theatre. So I was in the West End. I was in, again, Shakespeare's Globe. And so, yeah, I did a lot of theatres around the country. And so when I first started, not to go back to Forefront, but I just was a public speaking coach, because it was just someone that knows how to stand on stage and sort of compel their audience. It was just those skills that I was passing on. And then since then, I'm a qualified coach and done a lot more since then. But yeah, as an actor, I've spent most of my life standing on stages.
Yeah. And has that become easier? Because you said you started when you were about 8, I think you said. Is
Yeah,
that right?
Yeah. So I started when I was 8, but the reason I don't always count that in the 24 years, so I stopped when I was 32. So I guess actually that was longer than 24 years. But when I was 8, it was just, my uncle got a video camera for his 40th. My cousin immediately stole it off him. My cousin is now a very well-established director of a film production company. Right. They produce really great stuff. So everything he practiced as a kid, he would make the stuff and we would star in it. And that's how we spent all. So although I wasn't doing professional stuff till I was like 12, it was in my bones. It's what we did all the time from the age of 8.
Wow, that's incredible. And over those years, it just gets easier, does it? Just standing on stage and speaking publicly? I assume nerve-wracking at first, but...
Yeah, absolutely nerve-wracking, because before being 8, I remember going to audition for a school play, and I couldn't do it. Because they put it at lunchtime, so I spent all morning worrying about the auditions. And then even the start of lunch, I remember very specifically playing, what's that game where you hop and step?
Hopscotch. Is that right?
Yeah, hopscotch.
Yeah, again, the nod from Molly, yeah.
And just not being even able to play hopscotch because I was so stressed out about having to go and do an audition. I must have been like 7 at the time. And I just didn't go. I just didn't show up to it. So I've come from there to, I feel more comfortable on a stage than in lots of other environments.
That's incredible. We had a guest on recently, and I think it was Richard, I think. Richard from Yearning for E-Learning, I should say. And he mentioned, because he used to do a lot of acting and maybe not necessarily more stage, but it was more sort of comedic acting. Right. And we were talking about how sort of to be in business, sales in particular, but business, to some degree you've got to kind of act the role, act the part, or kind of act for the certain people you're speaking to. Would you agree with that, or is that a bad way to look at it, would you say?
I don't agree with that, but I think a lot of people do. I don't think you need to.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's where I think it's basically the foundation of our work is helping people to connect, and I think even when we don't pick up on it, our trust is impacted by whether like someone's just being their genuine self or not. And some people have really tuned into that. I would hope that I'm fairly tuned into it as a coach. Other people aren't, but there's just something in their gut that goes, I don't know what it is about this guy or this person. And so on the whole, I mean, there's a study on trust. So anyone who wants to look it up, it's a guy called David Mayer or David Meyer, pronounce the surname. It's the trust equation. And in the trust equation, it says we need 4, and this was proven scientifically, we need 4 major factors in order to gain somebody's trust. And credibility, reliability, people in business, like I'm trying to show you my credibility by putting on that act, as it were. But intimacy is one of the 4 major things that's needed. And it's in my work, I would say at least 90%. I've never written this down in terms of data, but it's most people I work with forget the intimacy part. They forget to just say, do you know what? Actually, I screwed that up, or I said that wrong, or, they don't, because they're trying to show credibility too hard. They're trying to put the act on to impress. And then, like, I work with a lot of startups, and when they're trying to then get investment from investors often will rely on their gut instinct. And so it's that moment where you go, Rob seems like a nice guy. The business is amazing, but I don't know what it is. My gut's saying no.
I hear that a lot.
And they pass.
No, I'm joking.
Imagine. It's a therapy session. But like that thing is so common for startups. And in my experience, it usually comes down to, well, you just weren't your genuine self.
That's
so they're
interesting.
like, I don't trust them, but they didn't know why.
So when it comes to that intimacy, is that more of just sort of bearing yourself and just being open and honest? And I'm not expecting people to go and give cuddles and kisses to whoever they're dealing with, are they? Or that's what my head's gone to immediately.
It's so funny that you just. So we do training sessions for like big groups, and then we really promote like one-to-one sessions of coaching. But we like to do the training sessions because it makes things more accessible. Like you can see, are we any good? Do you like it? But also just it's less expensive to kind of get in and get some of the tools and the tips. And whenever I talk about the trust equation, I always make a really bad dad joke about you don't have to go in and hug people, and you've just did it for me.
There you go. It's because
we're on the same. We're on the same clothes, and we're on the same mindset.
I generally think we are just a clone of each other somewhere down the line. But I mean, you obviously don't have to name names. Can you sort of share like a bit of a case study with either an individual or a company where you've taken them from, ground zero and sort of really supported them? Like, how would that look for the business?
So people can come in above ground zero as well and still kind of like scale up. So we work with everything from the youngest startup I've worked with was 2 months old, and then all the way up to very big sort of like corporate businesses, like household names here in the UK, because there's communication needed, all of those. But I guess to your point, if they come to us right at the beginning, just before you even get to logos, you can't start selling until you've at least got something to sell. Before you've even got logos, you've got to figure out what is the business, what's the story of the business, how can you, if you've got to get somebody to buy into it, to agree to it, to see the urgency and then sort of the need for it. One of the things I often say to clients is you can show the problem, but you need to show that someone will actually pay for this. Because you can show me that there's a million people in the UK with that who hate having to, I don't know, drive their own car. I just looks at a car out the window. And so we need driverless cars. But in order to produce that driverless car, it's going to cost X, it's going to cost you, it's going to cost 500,000 to buy the car. You look at the affordability within the UK, what is it? Something like 0.1% of people are actually going to be able to afford a car like that. So you've screwed up your market from the very beginning. And so I think when right at the very beginning, figuring out that market, but figuring out like why you started, like before we started recording this, we were talking about like for us, how important it is to help people, to be doing something that like we go home, sleep at night and we've done something helpful and beneficial. And I think it can be very easy in business to forget that bit, to forget why you're doing it in the first place. So as coaches, we help people figure out just why you're doing it. And anyone who's familiar with Simon Sinek,
massive fan, yeah.
Like that is all about your why. And for anyone who's watching, listening to this, just Google Simon Sinek, I would, and there's a lot of just really accessible, short podcasts and videos and stuff. But it's, you've got to start with that why, because all the companies that don't usually, I said all, and I said usually, usually fail. And so at the very, very, very base, we're just meeting people where they are and saying, okay, what do you want to do? Why do you want to do it? Coaching is mostly about big open questions. It's just starting with what, why, when, who, where, how. I might just repeated one there. It's asking those big open questions. But for those people who go, what's the point of coaching? And I'm not trying to sell it at all to people. What we do is we ask you the questions that you probably wouldn't ask yourself. And the answers are there. You just wouldn't have gotten to those answers because you weren't asking those questions. And so it can be really deep experiences for some people. And then other people, they've got all that why, they've got the kind of the branding, and they've even got revenue, and they've got people coming in. But there's something along the way that's not quite gelling. They're not able to tell that story to investors or prospect clients. And we help with all of that. So communication and how to improve it.
That's fun. It's really great to hear. And going back to sort of how we opened it up, I'm a big believer that, and you've kind of supported in that communication is just massive in a business. Whether it is through, whether it's through a sales arm, a marketing arm, or a leadership arm, whatever it is, if you're not communicating your vision, your dreams, your why, you're not going to get very far. Or even to investors, potentially, you're not going to get very far. And, massive fan of Simon Sinek. And that takes me to my next question, really, because I'm a big fan of Simon. If I say Simon, it sounds like I know him. I'm a big fan of
my mate Simon.
I'm a big fan of my mate Simon over there, and Si, as I get to call him. He also, there was a short video he did during a talk where he was talking about the Navy SEALs and talking about trust and I think it was capability. I think it could be something on there about how Navy SEALs would rather work with someone that they can trust over ability. Yeah. And I know that you've got a bit of a history and a background of working with the military and the UK forces. I think you've worked with all of them, the RAF, the Navy, and the Army. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
How was that for an experience?
I mean, I loved it. I would do it again. It's very difficult to get a contract with the military. That's why I'm not doing it at the minute. So I grew up in Hereford, which is a big army town. And,
home of the SAS, isn't it? I think, is that right?
I mean, on paper, yeah. I don't know. I don't know whether they're actually there or not. That's sort of, you don't want to know, really, do you? But yeah, it is. And growing up, like a lot of mates, I played rugby growing up, and so a lot of mates joined up in some fashion. And my primary school, my secondary school, and my sixth form were literally right next to each other. They weren't connected; they just happened to be right next to each other. And then to get into town, when you finish sixth form, you walk down the hill that went right past the Army Recruitment Centre. And as mates were joining up when I was 17, 18, the more and more I would walk past that centre, and it wasn't calling to me, but I would just be aware of it and just be like, I need to do this, and I really thought about it for a long time. I wanted to join the RAF for a long time. And of course I went off to drama school and became an actor because there was some twisted logic where I was like, I wanted to be three things in my life prior to that, which was a cowboy, because of westerns that my grand
obviously, who doesn't want to become a cowboy?
Who doesn't want to be a cowboy?
Still a dream now, I believe.
Yeah. But that's the thing, you become an actor, you get to do all of these things. And I wanted to be a policeman because my dad was at the time, and I wanted to be in the RAF. And then I was like, well, if I become an actor, I can do all of these three things. And I have since played all three of those things. Coincidentally, by the way, I didn't go chasing that, although I should have done. And so obviously I didn't get to properly do it. It was fun. It was pretended. It's acting, right? Like, so when the opportunity came up to go and do some training and consultancy with the military, it was something that I just leapt at. So at first I went in because as an actor, when there's loads of role play opportunities for not just in the military and say a law firm, there's promotions coming up and they need actors to go and kind of play those difficult clients or whatever. And the Army brilliantly do stuff like that. And so I went in as that and then got into more training and facilitating and and I've worked across those three forces. And for me, like, there's a lot of misunderstanding about the types of people that are in those organizations because it feels like a completely different world. And to me, it's not a completely different world. There's different words and terms and language. The needs are the same.
Yeah. And I think, I don't know whether it's just a modern day military change into how it was, World War II and post World War II, but it does seem, maybe relax is the wrong word, but I've got some military friends and people I meet down the gym who are military, and you look at them and you wouldn't expect them to be military and everything else, but still, that communication piece and sort of, I guess, that what you did there was still vital for how they lead and what they do on the I'll use the term battlefield. It's never really a battlefield anymore, is it? It's not like Risk or anything. I guess it is, but
I mean, there are still, but there's cyber battlefields now as well, which is a huge thing that's changed. The Army has exceptions to protected characteristics in terms of their hiring. So they had exceptions, or you couldn't join if you were disabled. You couldn't join There's certain things. Whereas now the cyber department, that's not an issue anymore. You can now join if you're disabled. I sound like I'm recruiting, but
yeah.
but it's changed. I guess what to your point it has changed a lot. It's a lot more open and accessible for people, I think, which it takes time. But I mean, when the training that I was doing with them at the time, they had a document, a book that had better diversity and inclusion than like any other like huge enterprise in the UK. Like, so they were, really open to like changing ways, I guess, and how to support those.
Which is great to hear, because I always feel that the military, similar to sports people, are a great crossover into business. I always feel, because I don't know whether it's, the processes, the regime, I don't know what it is. It can be transferred to business, right? I
certainly think people desire it. Yeah, desire those skills. I was not sure whether to mention them, but there's a major corporate bank out there that provide a scheme for ex-military. So it's when in their last 6 months, they kind of get like a period where they get some opportunities and they get some introductions and stuff. And there's a major corporate bank that basically you can jump straight into. I don't think it's private. JP Morgan and Amazon do a similar thing where they like help. So these big organizations that see exactly what you've just said and say, right, we'll bring them over. But I know with the JP Morgan one, I know a couple of ex-rugby players who've gone on to that scheme, not a separate scheme, gone on to that scheme. And I think there's a lot of similarity in terms of like camaraderie, connection, like working together as a team for a shared goal. And why would you not want that in business?
Too right, yeah. Like I say, it goes back to that trust and everything else. If you're used to being in those teams or, doing X, Y, Z together, you can trust someone in the office to do A, B, and C or X, Y, Z, can't you?
Yeah, theoretically.
Yeah, on paper. Yeah. Well, I want to dive deeper into your acting, because we had a great conversation off camera, just talking, and you mentioned it earlier about, this ceiling, and I do want to explore that, but I've had the hand of power from Molly, which means we're just slowly approaching break time. So are you ready to play our first little game, Mike?
Let's do it.
Perfect. So we're going to play fail or fiction first. So let me grab my notes, and Molly is joining us on the microphone, aren't you, Molly?
Yes, I am.
I have to just check, make sure she doesn't forget to turn the microphone on. Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned upstairs, fail or fiction is basically two truths and a lie. Okay, I'm going to read 3 short stories out to you, all involving UK brands, retail shops, could be softwares, hardwares, things that we've kind of got used to seeing or using, and they're either no longer with us, or they've made a mess up, or there was a marketing campaign that went wrong, whatever it is. 2 of them are true, 1 of them's completely made up. You've just got to guess which one. Now, there's no prizes. You're kind of against Molly, but not against Molly. So I don't want any squabbles, any fallings out or anything. But just, and of course, for you listening at home, do play along. So are you ready for the first story?
Yeah, that's it.
So we're going to go on to Debenhams first. So in the late 2000s, Debenhams decided to modernise their brand image and attract younger customers. They embarked on an ambitious campaign called New Generation, which included a complete store redesign and a new fashion line targeting millennials. The campaign was costly, with millions spent on trendy store makeovers and a high-profile advertising blitz featuring young celebrities. However, the effort backfired spectacularly. Long-time customers felt alienated by the sudden shift in brand identity, whilst the younger demographic didn't resonate with the brand they perceived as outdated despite the facelift. So sales plummeted, and they ultimately filed for administration in 2019. Next up, we're going to go to one of my favourites, Greggs. Known for its savoury pastries and sandwiches, they wanted to venture into fine dining, and with a new concept called Greggs Gourmet. In 2012, they opened a series of upscale restaurants in major cities, offering a menu crafted by celebrity chefs and featuring gourmet versions of their classic products. So there was a whole hype, initial excitement and curiosity, but it failed to take off. Greggs Law's customers found the prices too high and preferred the traditional bakery experience, whilst food critics and fine dining enthusiasts didn't take it seriously. After a year, they quietly closed all the locations and refocused on their core offerings. And finally, another one, we talk about this a lot on the podcast, actually, weirdly, Marks and Spencer. So in the early 2000s, M&S decided to expand their footprint into the US market, investing heavily in a new chain of stores called King Supermarkets. The plan was to replicate their UK success by offering high-quality food and clothing in upscale US neighbourhoods. However, they quickly discovered that the American retail market was vastly different. King Supermarket struggled with poor location choices, cultural differences in shopping habits, and stiff competition. So they had lots of investment, but the venture failed to gain traction. And by 2006, M&S sold the King Supermarket chain at a substantial loss, marking a costly misstep in their international expansion efforts. So 2 of those are true. 1 of them is completely made up. Any initial thoughts, Mike?
I mean, they could all be true. Like, I feel like... my initial thoughts are... I don't know if I'm helping you out here. My initial thoughts are, I've heard that Greg story, and I feel like I've heard that it was like an Instagram, like, we wish this existed story rather than a real story. M&S were really struggling here. So if they were trying to expand into the US, that seems stupid in itself. But then that very much could be true for that reason. And I obviously Debenhams, the second half I know is true. At the first half, I didn't think it was for those reasons. So those are my initial thoughts. That I don't really know.
That's fair. And I bet you're thinking, if they'd have communicated that well enough, they could have made it a success. Exactly. Molly,
Always.
any initial thoughts? What are you thinking?
I'm really stuck on this one, to be fair.
This is quite a tricky one, to be fair.
I'm edging towards the Marks and Spencer's one.
To be false?
False. Because
Okay.
I don't understand why they'd have a different name for the
The US one?
US market. I don't know.
No, that's fair.
Well, I assume that they were maybe buying up an existing supermarket. But
maybe, yeah. It doesn't really say whether they sort of bought out someone else or just set up from scratch. But yeah, whole new name, King Supermarkets.
I'm gonna go with Greg's being the false.
You think
story.
Greg's is the false?
I think I might be wrong, but I'm gonna go with Greg.
No, that's. Are you a fan of Greg's?
I mean, yeah, I think who isn't?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I don't know. To be fair, I say it's a favourite of mine. I've not been in ages. I can't say the last time
I've not been at Greg's in ages, but now when I go past the service station, I'm gonna.
You're gonna want a cheesy bean bake. Yeah,
steak bake.
Steak bake.
Yeah.
Molly, what's your answer?
Marks and Spencer's.
Marks and Spencer's. Okay, so I can tell you that one of you is correct. That one of you has guessed correctly. So we'll start with Debenhams. That was a true story. So Debenhams did attempt a major rebranding in the late 2000s, which did not succeed as intended, contributing to their financial struggles. It probably wasn't the nail on the coffin, but probably didn't help either. So it does leave us with Greg's. And it leaves us with Marks and Spencer's. So I'll ask you, I mean, if there was a Greg's sort of high-end restaurant, would you eat there?
I think they did. This is where I think Molly might be right now, because there was a pop-up in London that was a Greg's restaurant. I didn't think it was high-end. It was just you could go and
Greg's and sit down.
in, and have the pasty with a knife and fork. But no, I don't think I would eat there.
No,
because I feel like part of its charm is it's the old thing where the good old traditional bakery that you can just go in and grab things and go back to work or just But
no, you wouldn't. No,
I wouldn't.
So I can reveal that the made-up story out of these two is Greg's. So Mike wins. Sorry, Molly. Sorry. So
Sorry, Molly.
We'll come on to Greg's in a second. But yeah, M&S did attempt to expand into the US with the King Supermarket chain, which I'd never heard of. I didn't realise they'd try, but it just did not succeed and was sold off at a loss. Wow. So just couldn't keep up with the US retail environment by the looks of things. But then, yes, Greg's story is made up. I do remember the pop-up in London, but I think you're right. It was just, like you say, you can sit down and eat it kind of thing. They have experimented with a menu. They have not ventured into fine dining with a Greg's gourmet concept, which I think really, I don't think would work, would it? I mean, in theory, yes, it would, because, a nice, salmon en croûte maybe, or what I kind of think of, what's the thing I'm thinking of? Oh my God.
Like Tarto Tatan.
Maybe, I mean, we'll include it, something fancy.
Oh
my God, what's the thing I'm thinking of? Oh my God, it's gonna hit me off camera, but I'll think about it. But anyway, we're gonna take a very short break. Stay tuned for these messages, and we'll be back in just a second. Now, it's no secret, when you joined Paragon Sales Solutions, you came from a marketing background, bit of a sales background, but I put you through one of our online sales training courses. Can you remember that?
Absolutely, I do.
Was it good or was it bad?
It was bang on my first day, and you know what? As much as I may have detested listening to your voice for all those hours, it equipped me with all the skills that I needed to get started in my sales journey.
Well, first of all, that's rude. But secondly, you are true. And we now have 10 online sales training courses ready for you to learn in your own time. So in my day job, I'm actually a sales trainer by trade, a sales coach, and these courses have been taken on by I'm nearly at 10,000 learners, can you believe? Nearly 10,000 learners from all across the world. And if you want to improve your sales skills, maybe you're attending a business networking event that you feel nervous about, you don't know how to do it. Maybe you've got to do some telemarketing, some telesales. Maybe you need to just up your sales game. Whatever the reason, we've got a sales training course for you. Now, if you do want to sign up to a course, all you've got to do is visit our website. Go to www. Why do I keep saying www? ParagonSalesSolutions.co.uk. Find the little button that says online sales training courses. Enroll there. They're very cost effective. You can do them at home, at the gym, maybe not in the swimming pool because your phone will get wet, but you can do them anywhere. And they've had Sophia's seal of approval.
They are Sophia stamped. Absolutely.
Sophia stamped. Could you believe it? But do go sign up to those, and I look forward to working with you very soon. It's not a venison loin. What's the it's going to kill me. Like Gordon Ramsay's famous for it. You basically get a nice fillet of beef.
A Wellington.
Beef Wellington. Why couldn't I think about that? Yeah, thank you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. You see that would go well.
That I would do that.
Yeah, but I think if it's
a slice of Wellington in a bag like a pasty to take away.
There's a concept.
You need to start filming again.
Give
Greg that idea.
Take away beef Wellington. Are we on? Oh, are we on?
We're on. Anyway, there you go, Greg.
Perfect. Well, look, welcome back to How I Failed in Business, joined by Mike Lane Evans. Now, Mike, earlier on, you were talking about your acting career, and you mentioned it upstairs. I think it was 2016. I could be wrong, where things started to go a little bit wrong, if dare I say, with these auditions. What happened there?
Yeah, well, I mean, arguably they started to go quite right in the sense that I started getting a higher level of auditions. So, I think certainly over 2016, 2017, I had like 3 big sort of like Hollywood film auditions.
Any that we're allowed to know of, or that you want to share?
I don't know. I think one of them didn't even happen.
Oh, okay.
One of them was to star opposite Paul Rudd, who I'm a big fan of.
Wow.
And I've definitely got a bit of a man crush
on
Paul Rudd. Yeah.
Who doesn't?
And but it was just all of these things. It was just, I feel like in coaching, like we talk about your sort of overarching goal. So something over a period of coaching sessions that you want to achieve. Then there are stepping stones along the way, because it's just too daunting, too terrifying to just be like, oh, cool, yeah, I can see that thing. I'll just go there. And that's why most people can't get there in the first place. And for me, the Hollywood stuff was just like, oh, that's quite a leap from where I am. And yeah, and I just wasn't being as good as I could be at all. It was almost like too daunting or too overwhelming. One of the other things I figured out through therapy actually was that, which is another reason I stopped, is I didn't really want to be famous. So suddenly I was like, well, if I get this job, I'm going to have some level of being recognised.
It's going to be tough now after the podcast.
Well, I know, exactly.
Just thought you will get stopped in the street.
Yeah. I walk out that door. But interesting you say that. So I didn't do any kind of marketing like this at all for most of last year. And I got a team, marketing and sales team, and even my head of operations has been hounding me to do video content since he started in July last year. And I've resisted it because there was still this like big hang up in me of just going, I've left that industry because I don't want to be a face on, I don't want my video sort of stuff out there. I want to work with people and help them and it be about them, not it be about me. I just had to get over it because it's a good way to promote what your business is doing. But to be honest, the other thing as well now is it's just actually we're doing stuff that I think is really helpful for people. So if we talk about that for 2 minutes in an hour, I'd rather that was out there than not.
And you mentioned upstairs, the intentions of the business is to always put that customer or the client or the coachee,
Yeah.
you know, first. And like you say, I guess if you can create that content with them in mind, not you, because there are people out there in the business world, and a lot of people think it's me, but I don't think it is, that will put content out there because they like the look of their own face, they like the look of their own voice, or they want to become famous, they want to become the next Stephen Bartlett, they want to become the next business guru. But I think if you direct the content towards a customer, like you say, you're only going to benefit more people.
Well, I mean, look at Stephen Bartlett like, as an example. Like I listened to him literally yesterday, and on that episode, he talked about how they're up to 5 million. I haven't listened to him for a good few months, but now they're up to 5 million listeners, watchers, whatever.
Oh, it's catching up to us, yeah.
So yeah, close. Just needs one more. But people aren't doing that because they're not getting given a thing. It's not like, oh, I listened to Stephen Bartlett, now I'm instantly going to get 3 more clients. There's no like immediate ROI on doing it, right? Your investment of your time. But people are getting something out of those episodes otherwise, because that's 5 million who subscribed. There's plenty of people who are listening who haven't subscribed as well. And so, yeah, I think whilst he's really famous now, I think there's huge value in most of the content that's put out there, and that's why people go into it. And I also learned from him yesterday that there are now 3 million podcasts. And I don't know, he didn't mention if that's UK or globally. No, there are definitely people out there who just want their voice heard, you know. That is their purpose. Their purpose is to be wanted and needed by other people, or at least that's what they think it is. Whereas, yeah, it sounds like ours is to help people.
Help other people, which is, you know, I mean, hopefully is the intention of our podcast in the grand scheme of things. So going back to those auditions then, you know, you went through a series of auditions, and I think you described it as sort of hitting the ceiling or feeling a ceiling when you went into those rooms. Can you describe that? How? Yeah,
so one of my team still doesn't understand what this means. Everybody else in the team is like, yeah, like you just explain it like that and I get it. But that's really good that he doesn't understand it, because there'll be assumed people listening to this who are like, I don't know what you're talking about. So earlier on in the first half, I was saying, was this when we were talking upstairs? I'll say
who
it now.
knows, it's all a blur.
So basically what I've experienced, and this is my own research, and so I don't have like scientific fact for you, but when people are presenting themselves in some way, whether that's on stage or on a podcast or just one-on-one for a job interview or something like that, the nerves cause people, unless you get a control over it, if you're not in control of those nerves, they cause people to go one of two ways. Either sort of hyperactivity, talking fast, like quite often you see people holding their breath, and they're not, and you can have that sort of outer body experience. You come off stage or you walk out that room and go, I don't know what I just said, because you're just getting through it. The second is what I described as this ceiling, which is it just feels like you're not giving your full energy and you can't. And if you think about like playing a sports game or like going to the gym or like looking after your kid, you may be at like 8 o'clock at the end of the day, or like at 80 minutes of that 90-minute game. You want to sprint faster, you want to be fun with kid, but you've just not got it left. You can still make sure they don't die. You can still make sure that you're a body there on the pitch, but you haven't got it left. And that sort of sapping of energy is really, really common for people. You might have just woken up and you're well rested, but you then go into that nerve-wracking environment and the energy just gets drained out. And so that 60% is like, I wasn't able to operate at 100%. Wasn't able to show my full personality. I wasn't able to kind of just be fun in a situation. I took things too seriously. I was just worried. I was just so laser focused on say these lines and do this thing that I wasn't really giving a very good impression of myself. It's that intimacy we talked about before.
Yeah, I was going to say, because the more you've described it, I can recognize that within myself, to be honest. You know, I think similar to you, you know, I'm quite naturally extroverted. Just ask Molly the amount of times I come running down, shouting, screaming, throwing rugby balls around and everything. It's quite frightening at times. But, you know, I remember back when I was a young whippersnapper, so I played rugby a lot, you know, really good, you know, youth club, you know, local rugby. And I got scouted to go trial for county. And I remember going for these county trials, and I did exactly what you said there. Right. I wasn't myself. And I can still, I still remember I was up against these guys, and I started to compare myself to these guys even before we started playing. You know, I probably was 16 or 17, give or take. And I was like, oh, he's bigger than me. He's taller than me. Oh, he looks like he's going to be much faster than me.
Yeah.
And my performance was atrocious. And even now, sometimes I've got calls with, you know, some of our big top clients worth billions and millions of pounds. And if that call is 3, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, my morning gets a bit affected, because similar to like you're saying, not that I'm going to go play hopscotch, but I can't play hopscotch throughout the day because I'm thinking about it. Is that, would you say that they sound quite similar to what you're describing there?
Yeah. And I think it's one of the biggest issues in business. Like, people, it happens all the time. So many of my clients are just, it's all consuming, or you're sort of putting on, and sorry to Richard, who you had on here, but this is why I don't believe in putting the act on, because if we use the sort of parent example again, like, you might be exhausted at the end of the day and you're still going to like feign interest in the picture that they've put that, you know, doesn't look like anything. So there are times in life to put on an act for nicety, but I think when it comes to really trying to connect with somebody, because also it's too easy to say, oh, I really want that client because it's going to bring in $1 million, but that client is, I won't swear, not a very nice person. And you don't gel, you don't enjoy their company, you're nervous to hang out with them, they're always just rude to you. And you go, well, do I just suck it up and take the money? And I'm sure loads of people have just gone, yeah. People in my team would have gone, yeah. Or do you trust that what you're doing is so good, there's going to be another millionaire tomorrow or next week who you're going to get on with really well? And not only are you going to enjoy that work more, you'll be able to provide more value to them. And way beyond that, they're going to keep coming back because you're going to have that bond, and they're going to recommend more people to you. And I learned that, like, so before this, Rob said to me, you don't have to keep telling stories about failure just because it's about failure. But I am going to tell another story about failure. So when I set up Forefront Coaching, when I was having those clients with, those calls with big potential clients, I was finding myself at times kind of not deliberately putting on an act, but falling into that, who do they need me to be? And that is the danger, I think, is because maybe what Richard is talking about is if you can control putting on that face, sometimes that might be useful. I still am challenging myself to not do that, but there is value in it if you're in control of it. I think a lot of people are not in control of it, and it just happens. I'll give you an example. I didn't go to private school. One of my ex-girlfriends had gone to private school, and loads of her friends had gone to private school. And I just poshed up when I would hang out with her. I would just speak. I'm sure to lots of people I sound quite posh already, but I would become more, heightened in my accent. And just the thing, I was conscious of the way I talked about money and the way that I talked about my background. And I was like, this is just, I will swear now, that was bullshit.
Who am I?
Like, it's just like, I'm not enjoying my time here at all. And I think the same is true in business. You got to be genuine.
Yeah, and we've had stories, and I've been guilty of it, where we have not changed our way of working, but we've put up with that person we don't gel with, or we don't. What you said earlier about, I don't have a good feeling about this person. We've put up with those just because we're focused on the money, getting the money in the bank. We're focused on the cash flow, and it's always. There's never once where it's been like, do you know what, that was worth it? It's always gone, I should have trusted. But it's hard as a business owner, isn't it? It's very hard.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
Do you, would you say there's any correlation, and your answer might just be no, to those people that you really enjoyed working with and the kind of recommendations of clients from them, of other people?
Yeah, if I've understood the question correctly, I think for me, I don't know how to communicate it. I don't know how to word it, but there are people you get on with in life who just get it, who get you, and are your. I think I was talking to someone once, they called it like your tribe. They just get you, get it, understand it, are willing to listen, are willing to communicate back as well. Yeah. I don't want to kind of be upfront, but like us, like I feel like we're cut from a similar cloth. I'm sure we could talk for hours if we could about business and life and everything else in between. But it's just about those clients that just get it. Is that what you're alluding to, kind of thing? Or?
Yeah, and I think my sort of challenge to myself is, even when I meet with somebody that hasn't, that I don't necessarily gel with, I can still be curious to kind of see, because sometimes there are things that you are then going to gel about. We didn't know that we both grew up playing rugby until we've been here on camera. So things like that can be a huge opener for conversation. And not, sitting here as a British male, sport can too often be the thing. So I'm not promoting it has to be a sport even, just in our case, that was a thing that we didn't know. And so, just kind of being curious and like looking for what those things are massively helps you out. And sometimes you've got that gel. But I've just lost a client who, I definitely won't name this. It was a 30-minute call, which was supposed to be figuring out like the dates of the thing. And it lasted 8.5 minutes. And she ended the work. I've already said they ended the work.
He or she?
I'm sure you're not going to Google it anyway. But it was awkward because I had to do all the work. They didn't come onto the call and say, "Look, I know we said we're going to work together, but we're not going to work together." And so I ended up having to, at like 7 minutes in, say, "Are we doing this thing?" I asked it better than that. And she was like, "Oh, we're not going to be able to." And it was just, it felt really like there was no ability to connect, there was no want to connect from their side. And I think like bad things have to happen in business and in life. It's how you deal with it. You're still with another human being. And whilst this might not be the time to work together, and whilst you're maybe never going to work with this person, you don't know all the things that will come off the back of it. So I am a really big believer in not burning bridges. Even though people like Tony Robbins, if anyone knows Tony Robbins, I think he really promotes burning bridges because it's about free yourself from the shackles of the corporate place that you work in and open your mind to the possibilities. So I get that. I still just don't agree it's right because the other things could be around the corner.
I couldn't agree more. And, from the sales side of things, I always advise against burning the bridges because you never know what's going to happen down the line. And, me as a person 2 or 3 years ago is slightly different to the person that I am today now. Well, I've learned things, I've had new experiences, I've read books, I've listened to this, and my mind could be different. So even if I've rejected a sale or rejected an opportunity a couple of years ago, doesn't mean that I'm not open to it again now. And that's the same for the people that we talk about in these situations. Just because it's not right now, for whatever reason, doesn't mean that in the future it's not. And once again, it doesn't, you never know who they talk to and communicate with. And so I love this concept around, well, I don't love it, but I love having that understanding of the ceiling and so on. For anyone listening to this, of course, the big thing will be to get in contact with you at Forefront Coaching, of course. But if someone's listening to this and they go, that's resonated deep with me, I do that a lot. Are there any tips you can provide? What should people do?
Yeah, so if that is happening for you, a lot of people it will be happening and you won't know it's happening necessarily. So that's why I'm sort of slightly hesitating here. If you know that it's happening for you, I would say take some time and explore why or when. Even start with when. So for an example I can give you, and this is quite a privileged thing I'm going to say, but for the first time in my life, in February, I took myself away for 3 days to Whitstable, stayed in an Airbnb on my own, didn't talk to anybody because my life is a lot of talking, and just read books and walked. And that was the plan. But I also thought and just had time to digest things and figure out what was important to me, what was important to the business and where I wanted to go. I get there'll be people with 3 kids watching this who are like, I hate you right now. So I get that that's not always, but if it's take that drive to the supermarket on your own for 10 minutes, but don't be like, also trying to text on the way, like just find your moments, go to the toilet. I think that's for a lot of my parent friends. That's what they hide. They hide, yeah. But like, however busy or not busy your life is, like just figure out for you, how can you get 5 minutes, 10 minutes, ideally like a day, to just ask yourself some questions and go, okay, that happened again just now on the podcast with Rob. I got in the car, I left, and I don't feel like it has happened for me today, but if you go on a podcast, if you go into an interview, if you go into a meeting or whatever those situations are, and you come out and you're like, it happened again. One of the things that I've found really helpful for me is diarising time for yourself. So in that moment, you might be like, well, I've got to run into the next meeting. It takes 30 seconds to open up the diary, find the next 10-minute spot and just go, I'm going to sit down and just not do anything or just think and just figure out, why did that happen when I was on the podcast with Rob? And you won't come up with the answer straight away because sorry for the parents, again, it does take more than 10 minutes to figure that out most of the time. Starting that process is the beginning of building a habit that will help you come out of it.
I think that's like the absolute soundbite we needed in the podcast. That was perfect. And, you know, we won't have time to discuss it, but, you know, I'm a big advocate for time and thinking. I think it's something we lack a lot of these days. You know, I read something somewhere, I can't remember what it was, about, I'll call it, you know, like the train phenomena. You know, back in the day, people would sit on a train, gaze out the window and think.
Yeah.
They would process their thoughts. And it's normally from those situations where great creative pieces have come from, you know, writing pieces. And I'm sure that's what happened with J.K. Rowling with Harry Potter. I could be wrong, but, you know, that...
I think she did on trains.
Yeah.
I think that was her,
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense with what happens with the Hogwarts Express, doesn't it, I guess? But, you know, having that thinking time. And my concern is that in today, you know, I'm going to sound like ChatGPT. In today's busy world, we don't have time to think because we go from meeting to meeting, we go from Zoom call to Zoom call. And even now I see it, you know, the younger generation, they won't walk and look and take in their surroundings and look at nature, then look at the trees. They walk and they stare at their phone. And that devoids us of thinking time, doesn't it?
Yeah, and you know, I'm not of the younger generation. I live in London and I enjoy the fast-paced life, and I do that. Like I will try to. No one can multitask. Sorry to break that to people. Scientifically, we know that what you do is you make micro-parallel decisions, and so when we think that we're multitasking, we're usually just being a little bit less effective at those other things. But our culture, our life is built that way, you know, social media and emails coming into our phone and access. One of the great things about coming up here on the train is that the East Midlands Railway, and yes, I will name it, is awful. Like, it never runs on time. It's really expensive. It hasn't been touched or improved in years. And they claim that there's no signal on it because it's a fast one. They claim there's Wi-Fi. There's no Wi-Fi. Like, it just doesn't work. And so actually, it's an hour and a half whenever I come up to see my family up here where I can't do any work. And usually I'm coming up here because it's my wife's family that live up in Leicestershire. It's a great hour and a half to talk to each other, connect with each other. Yeah. So the train phenomenon that resonates with me a lot.
Love that. Would you have a quick word from our sponsors, East Midlands Railway? No, and the weirdly ironic thing is I saw it. So we're good friends with the team that run a local social media account called Cool as Leicester, and they tweeted the very same thing today. Believe it or not, if you check their tweet or X's or their tweets, you know, they put out there, East Midlands Railway either fix your Wi-Fi or just take down the signs. Stop pretending you've got it. It's non-existent.
But when you look at customer satisfaction, you've caused us all to be angry. If you just said there was no Wi-Fi, there would be some initial annoyance, but as we continued, the disappointment wouldn't be there.
No, exactly.
You're making it worse.
Exactly, by saying it's there when it's not. But we'll play. Well, so I want to hear some more about the business, and we'll, you know, how people can get in touch with you. We'll very quickly play our final game before we do, if that's all okay. So Molly, is your microphone on and primed and ready to look at that face? She is. I don't know whether it was a grimace. Can see her face. It was a grimace or an excited face. Are you ready for the game, Molly?
I'm ready for the game.
She's just about ready for the game. What she also loves is hearing her own voice in her ears right now, don't you, Molly?
She's just shaking her head at us.
So, Mystery Mishaps, very simple game. I'm going to share with you 5 clues about, today's actually going to be a retailer or a former retailer. I'm going to share with you 5 clues. You've just got to guess who you think it is. Yeah. And the first to guess wins. Okay, Molly, you're locked and loaded.
Ready. So
it's a UK-based fashion retailer that made a costly mistake in the 2010s. The brand was known for its trendy clothing and accessories. I wonder if they sold beige chinos and black shirts, who knows? This retailer was a favourite among young fashionistas and had a strong presence on the high street.
Is that all the clue?
That's clue 1 of 5. So
Oh, I think I've got it.
Yeah. Who you think?
Does it count as my guess? Do I lose to Molly if I get it wrong?
Sophia's not here. Sophia's strict on the rules because she's competitive. Who have you got? Top Shop, okay.
That's what I was thinking.
Thinking Top Shop, okay. So, in an attempt to expand its market share, the company launched a new line aimed at older, more affluent customers. Would you like clue number 3?
Yes, please.
The new line featured high-end, expensive items that deviated from the brand's usual affordable, trendy offerings.
That was also Topshop did that, yeah.
Okay. And please, if you are listening at home, do play along. There's no prizes. Don't write in. The existing customer base felt alienated and the new target audience didn't resonate with the brand's new direction. Molly, staying quiet over there. You still thinking, what did you say Topshop as well?
Yeah, but I don't recall that. But I don't know.
Final clue then. The failed expansion led to significant financial losses and the company eventually had to close several stores and refocus on its core demographic.
Well, then that's not Topshop because they just closed altogether. Unless they... I guess...
But I think, isn't Topshop coming back
It's
under...
ASOS own it.
ASOS own it now,
yeah,
do
so
they?
their stuff is online, right?
Yeah.
I don't remember the older part, but I do remember them bringing out a higher end section of the shop. And I do remember them having to close because they just, they weren't getting the same kind of... I'm going to stick with it.
Just you sticking with Topshop.
Yeah, just because I can't think of another one.
Molly, what's our answer over there?
I don't know.
Don't know?
I generally don't.
Are you sticking with Topshop or are you splitting?
Let's just-
twisting.
I can't think of anything else, so we're lucky.
Topshop. Well,
Yes.
if you would have said Topshop, I can tell you that you were correct.
Hey.
You were correct in clue number 1. So yeah, I can't remember the design to kind of rebrand and look at this new audience, but apparently there was an attempt to cater to an older affluent market, but it just led to financial struggles and store closures. So there we are. Well, I've now been given the 5-minute warning from Molly, so we don't have too long. So Mike, before we vanish, pitch your business, plug your business. How can people get in contact with you? How can we reach out to you?
So forefront-coaching.com. We're global. We haven't worked on Antarctica yet, but otherwise, the penguins don't need us to coach them. Like, I'll be honest. No, it really, like we've worked across all other continents. In the last 18 months, we travel, and we also, through the magic wonders of Zoom and other brands out there as well. And we, a lot of our sort of, because we predominantly, or our foundation, we are a coaching company. We're really, really passionate about the one-on-one coaching sessions. We do run a lot of training. We go into sort of large like enterprises and run like full-day training courses, 3-day training courses. Even then, just to warn anyone that emails us, we will be coming back saying, we'll do the 1-day training course. Would you also like some coaching on the end? And it's not about selling. I hate upsell. Like I find it, even when it comes from a genuine place, I always feel a bit disingenuous with it. It's my issue to get over. It's for us that we just see so much more value when people get those opportunities to connect with, because you might be Topshop and you have all of these problems and you bring us in to do this massive training day and it ticks that box and you go, cool, they know about public speaking now. But there was 20 voices in there, and actually there were 3 really introverted people who really need your help in, because they've got to do internal presentations all the time, but their voices were squashed even when we opened them up as much as possible. And actually those coaching sessions can be hugely valuable for those individuals, and then also for the extroverts. To sometimes we see people that just show off because they're more comfortable that way, but actually they don't connect with what's real for them. So that is a heads up for people. We are, at our foundation, we're coaching. We offer a lot of training as well. The biggest thing I'd like to mention as well, though, is that we are building an accelerator program that is aimed at 18 to 30-year-olds from a lower socioeconomic status. And we are very much searching and in conversations with a partner. We're looking for a partner or partners. So anybody, if you happen to have people in your audience that might be watching that, we're doing quite well from a client perspective. I'd love anybody that wants to say, look, I can't partner with you, I can do an introduction. Because I think, and the last thing to say, I'm aware Molly will cut us off otherwise.
No, she'll keep going.
Sorry, Molly. But I think what I've seen a lot from when I've traveled globally, and I'm seeing it so much here in the UK, is that university isn't really needed for a lot of industries anymore. to start a business, you need a mobile phone and you need a laptop. However, what you really need is access to capital and access to people. And a lot of people from lower socioeconomic status may not have access to those people. And so then there's this pathway of, well, go to university, build your network, then go and work for your JP Morgan or whoever, build the network even further. And now you can do your startup 10 years down the line. But we've got these hugely innovative, creatively minded 18-year-olds who could be changing the UK now rather than having to wait 10 years for it. So let's support those people. Let's give them access to capital and to people so that they can start it sooner. So I'm really passionate about it, and that's why it's not like an upselling thing for me. I think it's going to change things for the UK.
That's fantastic. Well, we'll make sure we drop all your contact details in all the show notes, in all the descriptions below, all your website addresses and so on. And of course, people can find you on LinkedIn as well, I think, can't
yes,
they?
yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. Forefront page on LinkedIn is very, very, there's not a lot of followers. So please come and fix that. But the reason being, I'm not very good at social media, and my team, who in the last couple of months are starting to do really good things with it. So there will be a lot of content, free content that we're going to start putting out, short form videos and stuff. And so, yeah, come and follow us and access that free content.
Fantastic. Well, look, Mike, thanks so much you'll have to come on again, because it'll be nice for Sophia to meet you and go through the motions with you as well. But I think there's so much we could probably talk about, and we've probably only, hit the tip of the iceberg. And maybe, look, next time we'll set up a little road show and come down to you maybe, and, we can bring all the recording equipment and set up near you. It'll be good fun. But thanks so much for coming on. It's been great to sit down with you. So thank you.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you to you, the viewer or the listener, who's watched or listened to this fantastic episode. Honestly, I really love this one, Mike. I look forward to getting it all edited up. If you have liked the episode, or even if you haven't liked the episode, hit that follow button, hit the subscribe button, drop us a like, share it to at least 3 or 4 people that you know. And don't forget, myself and Sophia, who unfortunately isn't here today, do release new content every Tuesday and Friday. So there's something new, fresh and vibrant every week. Thank you so much for joining us. I've been Rob Spence, and this has been the How I Failed in Business podcast.